Okay, so first of all, empathy has sort of different connotations. There's first of all understanding how other people think, and there's sympathizing with them. Our understanding of how, they're not completely disconnected, but our understanding of how people think, some have argued that that's what's driven our intelligence. It's our social intelligence constantly increasing that's driven the increase in the size of the human brain and all our complex society. And if you look at humans, definitely humans, some humans who have great understanding of how other humans work are not at all the most sympathetic ones. I mean, politicians would be a standard example. There's another debate as to whether you would want your politicians to be sympathetic or whether you'd want them to be more rational. But definitely a great skill in knowing how people think does not go along with a great niceness or friendliness with other people. Then there's the other problem. This is that philosophers have found that generally simple terms are tremendously complicated to define. Empathy sounds simple because we all have it, or we've seen other people with it. We kind of have a nebulous version of this. But now try and couch empathy in terms that a computer can understand. I mean, computer programmers can sympathize with this. Something that seems to be very easy. Oh, yes, I'll just write something. Yeah, I want it to pick up the red object, not the blue object. Yeah, that should be easy. Then it turns out, ooh, this is actually tremendously hard. Yes. And even nowadays, it's very hard to get a robot hand to pick up, say, a blue ball in a general crowded environment. And okay, you may feel as to whether we're achieving that now or not, but the fact is we've had computers for 50 years, more than that. And for at least 50 years, the world's greatest minds were unable to make a computer pick up a red ball or a blue ball in a crowded environment. Do you expect that we can take empathy and code that into a computer when we failed with the pick up the blue ball? There's a general rule in computer science that everything that's easy is hard, everything that's hard is easy. What it means is that we've evolved to be very good at some things, and they feel instinctive to us. And we think they should be easy to program into a computer, except they're not. They're extremely hard. Logic, chess, these feel hard to us. Initially, people thought they'd be hard to put into a computer. Turned out they were a lot easier than picking up a blue ball. And empathy is really deeply wired into us. It's been, at least empathy in the understanding others sense, it's been the focus of our evolution. So this is something that we should expect would be tremendously difficult to program, to code into a computer. I think the human race, on most of the trends, is doing pretty well. There's some negatives, but I mean, there is more wealth, unequally divided, but there is more wealth. Even in poorer countries, people are getting wealthier. There is less war than there ever was. And a lot of the risks, we've moved humanity beyond most risks. Resource depletion is not a particularly bad risk. We can get more than enough energy through the sun using current technologies, for instance. As I say, there's inequalities, there's environment degradation, there's a bunch of stuff that we need to be worried about, but none of these are sort of terminal. And so actually, in a lot of ways, the future's looking pretty good. from the trends. The big risks are the things coming, new stuff, new tech bursting in on the scene, like synthetic biology, like some versions of nanotechnology, and like AI. So yes, AI is something that frightens me because it seems the most likely way that we could actually completely destroy ourselves is through a super intelligent AI that is indifferent to some feature of humanity. And that'll generally end up with humanity as we know it ending within a short or longer time period. So that's why AI is so frightening, because it has this great downside potential. It has huge upside potentials as well. A lot of transhumanists will tell you all the details about that. But it's the most likely way that we can derail sort of the current trends.
Okay, the most likely. That's interesting. How do you assess that likelihood?
Well, okay, this is where it gets tricky. It's more that other risks seem so low. Climate change, that's sort of current fashionable ones. Climate change is going to cause misery, climate change is going to cost money, but climate change is not likely to wipe out the human race. There's no real plausible scenarios for that happens. You could say there's instability, there's war, but war's been going down. So this would have to buck against that trend as well. We also have increased wealth, so at least rich countries, it'll cost, but they can deal with this. And as I say, yes, misery, problems, really no plausible way that it could end up derailing current technological civilization, and even less way that this could go as bad as human extinction. Meteor impacts. Well, there are meteors out there. We kind of know their size. Really unlikely that we get hit by a really bad one within, say, the next century. And if current technological trends continue within a century, we'll probably be out in space and we'll be able to deal with these things. As far as I know, no one in human history has ever been killed by a meteor that we know of. So that doesn't mean there's no risk, but it does mean, but it's a hint that this thing is quite low. Supervolcanos, yes, there's scary stories, like the Yellowstone thing and stuff like that. But again, on 100-year time scale, very unlikely that these can happen. So these we can quantify. On 1,000-year time scale, still very unlikely. And on 1,000 years, if we're still around as a technological civilization in 1,000 years, we can deal with that. So there's supernova a few light years away. We're pretty much doomed whatever we do. So we can't actually do anything about it. But yeah, this is unlikely to happen. And even if it does, there's nothing we can do about it either way. So, so when we look at, then we have AI. And as I say, even though AI timelines are very hard to predict, there's some evidence from the whole braining relations that some forms of AIs probably can happen within 100 years. There's interesting philosophical arguments that I think are relatively solid, that AIs are likely to be very smart just by running them faster, training them, networking them together, and that this will likely make them extremely powerful. collectively, if not individually, and they can be copied, so collective is very rapid, and that unless they have very strong human values in them, that we're going to end up a casualty in history. So putting all those together, and also a point recently that designer plagues might be an existential risk. Nuclear war with a nuclear winter might be an existential risk. But most of these existential risks may plausibly kill 90% of the population, 99% of the population. But seems it's a lot less plausible that they'll go the last distance and really get the last humans. If AIs are misbehaving and eliminating humans through various ways, maybe they want us to be happy, so they're locking us on constant heroin drips, and that's the end of humanity as we know it. There's just happy drones not thinking anything forever and ever. But whatever they're doing, if they start trying to eliminate humanity and they get 99% of the way, then it's much more likely that they'll finish the job there.
Have you heard the story with folded hands?
Yes. With folded hands is, of course, not how it would happen. It's a cautionary tale. It's useful, but of course, an AI that has enough of our values that, because with folded hands, if I understand, all that happens is that we're basically forbidden to do anything that might be dangerous, but otherwise left alone. I mean, if the AI, for instance, is sufficiently advanced to understand that it shouldn't be rewiring us to make us avoid risks instinctively, that it shouldn't be freezing us to make us totally avoid risks, or it's already got a huge amount of human values in it just to get to the level of with folded hands. And so probably the extra bit of, yeah, don't do this, is probably relatively easy. I think these problems are severe. I think they're solvable. So efforts put into this are definitely worth it and very rewarded. I mean, you want to give the world to your grandchildren, and a successful AI transition would nearly guarantee that, and an unsuccessful one would nearly certainly doom it. So in terms of priorities, it's probably one of the highest priorities there is.
Well, what are the payoffs of getting it right?
Well, as I say, you can definitely cure all diseases. If society wants it, you could get immortality. It's sort of engineering the human body to endure, to exist longer, which should not be a problem. If the AI really has human values, then finding entertaining and worthwhile things for everybody to do will also be an easy job for it. So end to poverty, great experiences, great potential for social interactions, and then doing this amongst the planets and then potentially amongst the stars. That's kind of what's on offer. But yes, but the doom is also on offer. That's another reason why working on this existential risk is so worthwhile, because the line between, if you want, fabulousness and utter disaster is very fine, and so the impact of shifting is also very huge.